Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Lee Baca. He is the Sheriff for Los Angeles County. Welcome back, sir. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Brad.
I want to speak with you about the prison crisis in our state. It is undeniable that we are in crisis. We have a federal court order which is demanding that we downsize the state prison population by about 10,000. We know that recently the legislature and the governor came to an agreement whereby they would go back to the court, ask them if they could spend a certain amount of money to work on rehabilitation programs instead of releasing these prisoners. If the court says no, then they will engage in a decrease of the prison population. Talk to us about the plan.
Well, I think the state is in a quandary. The judges, the three panel judges, they are looking at this from a different point of view. A lot of things have been done for the state prison improvement. I'm on the board of state and community corrections.
Right.
I know that they've upgraded their health care. I know that they've done a lot to depopulate. But at the same time, I think the judges need to get off the bench, go to the jails, look for themselves. Their staff have advocacy level, which we understand. But you got to look into this from a realistic point of view.
It is interesting because if you look at the prison population in the state, in June of 2011, when the Supreme Court ruling came down, the state prison population was over 80% capacity. Most recently, as the Supreme Court, or as the local court is ordering that the prison population decrease, the prison population had dropped to over 46 over capacity. Now that's still too much, but that's a big swing. I mean, you can see there have been improvements in decreasing the prison population.
No doubt there have been improvements. In the 40,000 reduction and now another 10, the problem with the 10 that they're discussing is that you're going to release some people that are potentially violent, and some are actually violent, and you got to check their past histories as well. And the reason they're in there for a long period of time is because they've done multiple offenses, and the people of California need to have a proper balance.
But what do we do? I mean, look, I understand that Senate Pro Tem Steinberg is looking to somehow shift resources in such a way that we can work towards rehabilitation programs, and that's a laudable goal. But the court has been so very clear that they believe that California has been intransigent, defiant, engaging in the deliberate failure to abide by court rulings. And these are their words, not mine. So in some ways, one could argue that the state plan to try to decrease the prison population, not through so much decreasing the size, but going through rehab programs, it's a poke in the eye to the court.
Well, in a way, it sounds that way, but I think what's lacking in the prisons is what we're now doing in the county jails, and that is we have education programs. 7,000 inmates are now looking to get their GED or their high school diploma, and they have drug recovery programs. So the question is, can an inmate earn his way out of the prison through good behavior, classes, education, preparation for reentry, non-recidivism style type programs? We want you out and not back in. 70% recidivism is a terrible statistic.
It is, and it's very high. It's one of the highest in the nation. But are you aware if the state has programs similar to what you're describing out of LA County?
The state does not, and because I'm on the board of state and community corrections, I'm going to insist that we start this programming model because you want to let the prisoners out that are more likely not to reoffend.
Right. But here we are, and we're going to have to spend $400 million to shift the prisoners that would be released under the court order to either out-of-state prisons, to county jails, to private facilities. That's sucking money out of our state reserve. Where is the money going to come from for these programs? And again, I'm presuming that the federal court does not grant the state's wish that money be spent on rehab like we suggested, and that they demand that there be a shift.
Well, you clearly define conflicting priorities and where money fits in all of them. And I think that what will happen here is if they go into a $500 million depopulation plan with private jails, that could work. There's several over in Kern County that we've even looked at. So I think they're looking at opportunities, but can you eat this whole 10,000 in one gulp? I don't think so.
So should we presume that the court will not grant the request of the state, which is essentially Senator Steinberg's request, and therefore do we need to start looking for money for state rehab programs? You know, the budget's doing much better in California. Is it time to start looking towards towards additional dollars.
There's no question that state funds for education in prisons is a good deal, because the studies we've done show less recidivism for those that have been through programs, and reentry starts in prison, not when you get out on the street when people can't get to their locations of treatment.
So with these almost 10,000 prisoners, they will not be released to counties. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, they will.
But no, to county jails, I should say.
Okay.
They will not be released to county jails.
That's
they will
correct.
be released, or more importantly, sent to the private facilities, out-of-state facilities, and anywhere else they can go.
They will go from one state level incarceration environment to local communities that have jails or prisons that can afford to accommodate them.
Because the governor has said he will not release these individuals into the general population.
And the governor's wise on the issue. You know, public safety and the whole issue of environment in prisons is a real delicate balance. And the question is, can we do better? And I think we can, and we just have to be patient. And I ask the judges to extend the time. Extend the time, be patient, let's figure this out.
I just can't imagine when they're indicating in their recent ruling that California is defiant, intransigent, and engaged in deliberate failure.
I think there's a little of that on both sides. You know, it's a matter of not coming to the table appropriately and saying, what is the path for more effective prison sentencing where people come out better than they were when they went in?
So as we speak today, with those 10,000, they're not going to be released into the general population. They're going to go to these separate facilities. Could any of them come to LA County's facilities?
Well, yes, we have a camp program for the firefighting effort that goes on here in Southern California. And so you're going to see some shifting of some of the population into these camps. About 500 is what we've got currently in Los Angeles County. So we know that because we have the largest jail system, 19,000 prisoners, that we're kind of like looking at the same problems that the prisons have, but we're being more innovative. We have more flexibility, less bureaucratic.
Can I ask you about these fire camps? Because I always wondered, here are these prisoners who are getting tremendous education by working in these fire camps, and they're learning a real skill. Can they take that skill when they're released? I mean, or do they become persona non grata because they have these convictions?
Well, it's hard to translate a fire camp prevention program into an actual job when you're released from the incarceration obligation. But it does cause for a person to have a different environment where they can not get influenced by their habitual drug problem. They can't get influenced by the negativity of whatever friends they may have.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, is it time to try to create programs since we are training these individuals?
Well, let's talk about a good one. All the potholes and trees that need to be trimmed. We ought to have inmates that are paid low type wages because they're paying back their debt to society. And let's give them the proper equipment to fix the sidewalks and the potholes all over LA.
So what are we waiting for? I mean, we have a 100-year wait for potholes and cracked sidewalks.
It's just that we need more dialogue between the county and the city of LA. Let's look at this comprehensively. How can we capitalize on the skills of men and women that would like to work in the field and then come back to the jails for the nighttime period and then help make our city safer, not only from that standpoint, but our streets safer, our sidewalks safer.
I want to talk about LA County specifically. We know LA County has been impacted by AB 109, which sends those lower level offenders to county jails. How is it going in our final moments? Are we doing all right here in LA County?
We are doing well. We have peaked at about 6,000 of the entire 19,000 population. They're all in education-based programs, which then leads to the better result coming out. And we've done our study. We have 12% less recidivism for that population. That's a lot of money that's going to be prevented from being spent on repeat offenders. And that's where we got to go. We have to start measuring the success of jails and prisons upon release.
Okay, his name is Lee Baca. He is Sheriff for Los Angeles County. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Jeff Prang. He is a member of the West Hollywood City Council, also a candidate for assessor in LA County. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
Men comprise what percentage of the nation's prison and jail? 60, 70, 80, or 90%? Men make up 90% of the prison and local jail population, with an imprisonment rate 14 times higher than women.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Jeff Prang. He's a member of the West Hollywood City Council. He's also an announced candidate for the Assessor in Los Angeles County. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brad.
Let's start with West Hollywood, then
Sure.
we'll move to the Assessor's office. West Hollywood, what a great, vibrant city. I understand that it is innovating yet again. Why don't you tell us about the latest innovation?
Well, first I have to say, just a point of pride, West
Yes.
Hollywood is probably one of the most successfully managed cities in the state. Our
Nice.
budget has been solid all the way through the recession.
Crises, right.
We have had to maintain a AAA bond rating and continue to invest in services. And one of those services,
Yes.
one of the big challenges we have in the city is parking. Anybody who's been there knows parking is difficult.
That's Santa Monica Boulevard, no doubt.
Well, we've added a couple thousand spaces over the last 10 years, but right now we're building behind City Hall California's first automated parking garage.
What does that mean?
It'll be
What does that mean?
It's going to be about the size of a normal parking structure,
Okay.
45 feet tall. It'll park anywhere between 250 and 300 vehicles, but it is totally automated. You park your car, you drive your car into a stall, you get
Okay.
out, and the elevator will park your car.
The elevator parks
Elevator
your car.
parks your car.
So you don't know where it's going.
there's-
It's
there's
just
no-
going into the ether somewhere.
There are no ramps. You don't have to go into the building. It is completely automated. Common technology used in Asia
I've
and in
seen
Europe.
it. And so how do you recall your car?
You get a ticket.
And so you put your ticket in?
So you get your ticket in, and it brings your car back. It's
remarkable.
it's less expensive to build than a conventional garage.
Why?
And you don't have to. Most garages, one of the things that's most
Right.
expensive is to get the number of spaces you need. You have to dig down, and that's very expensive. You have to build ramping, heavy infrastructure needs to support the structure. This is just the walls, the ceiling, and some mechanics on the inside.
I just want to go and watch it work. I mean, I don't even need to park my car.
Well, you can see how it works, a live demonstration at www.weho.org, and there's a place
Okay.
on our city's website.
Have you started construction?
Not yet.
And do you know when you'll start construction?
Yes, at the end of this year.
And when will it be done?
It should probably be about 18 months
That's
to
not
construct.
bad. That's not bad. Okay, so let's move gears, shift gears, if I may, if
Surely.
I can use that cliche, and talk about the assessor's office.
Right.
You are an announced candidate for the county assessor here in Los Angeles County, and I think it's fair to say, sir, that the assessor's office has had a tough few years. We know that the current assessor's under indictment. He has not left his office, and so whomever the new assessor will be, they're walking into a tricky situation.
It's a very difficult environment, and the people of LA County are very concerned because the assessor is somebody who has to be competent. They have to have a level of integrity to ensure that the assessments which are assigned are fair, that they're accurate, and so that nobody's paying more taxes than they absolutely have to. I've been very proud that over the last 12 to 14 months, I've been part of the reform administration in the assessor's office, trying to pick up the pieces. I've helped
Right.
coordinate the department's strategic plan, which will help guide us in the next several years, and to adopt the policies necessary to overcome the problems of
The prior administration.
or the current
I guess,
absent administration.
right. Now, this is not the first time you've worked for the assessor.
I worked for the assessor in the early 1990s for Assessor Kenny Hahn, and
Not Supervisor
not
Kenny Hahn?
Supervisor Kenny
Right.
Hahn. I went through appraisal training.
Right.
And I know a lot of the people in the department, and I care about the department and its reputation and its good operations.
So do talk to us about how the department is doing, because like you said, appraisals are very important, and I have to think the department is very busy because, as you know, under Proposition 8, there can be valuations which decrease, and with the economy rebounding, those valuations can go back up. So I'm sure you're busy.
We are still recovering from the recession. Thousands upon thousands of properties declined in value. We
Right.
had to lower those assessments for property tax purposes during that period of time. Many of them are rebounding now. We have to annually review those assessments to make sure that they're accurate and consistent with where the recovery is.
And what's so interesting, if I may, sir, I've learned this from some of your colleagues, is that with Prop 8, the valuation goes down automatically. The assessor is required to decrease it.
Yes,
You don't
we
even
are.
need to file an application, although you
right.
can. But under Prop 13, your property taxes can only go up 2%, but if it's a decreased valuation, it can go up faster.
For example, if you have a
Please.
$100,000 property that reduces in value to $50,000 and then it goes back up to 100, the assessor can take you, it has to take you back up to that assessment, even if it's beyond the 2%.
That quickly.
But
it can happen in 1 year,
in
theoretically.
1 year, only in the case of a decline in value.
Right.
It will never happen under normal circumstances with just the annual adjustments.
So is the office particularly busy with these issues, these Prop 8 issues?
Yes, it is still a very large part of our work program. But some of the other things we've had to work on over the last year, one, we had to restore confidence of our employees, because overwhelmingly, the employees are good, hard-working public servants who did not deserve to have their reputation tarnished.
How large is the department?
It's about 1,300 plus employees.
I mean,
about $150 million budget.
I laugh, and I say this to you as well, given that you're a Michigander yourself, but if LA County were a state, it would be as big as Michigan, the state.
Yes, the assessor of Los Angeles County represents more people than the governors of 42 states.
It's remarkable.
But other things that we're working on is it's important to restore the trust of the public. The public saw this allegations of pay to play. They want to make certain that they're not paying a dime more in taxes than they are required to by law. And it's going to be very important for me to ensure that the public has that faith that we're doing the right thing. And I've been in office for 16 years, and people know
in West
me
Hollywood.
In West Hollywood, but I've been a government administrator. I was an assistant city manager.
Right.
I've got a reputation for competence and for integrity, and I think that those skills are going to be what's important to take this department into the next.
Now, I got to ask you,
into the
just
future.
politically, you're running in a county with 10 million inhabitants. Like you said, that's bigger than 42 states. How do you get the message out that Jeff Prang is the guy to be county assessor?
It is very difficult, but fortunately I've been in office for a very long time. I've had leadership positions in municipal government, and so I know people from Lancaster to Long Beach and from Calabasas to San Dimas.
And as I understand it, so West Hollywood is what's called a contract city.
A contract city, yes.
So it doesn't have its own charter. Is that
well,
correct?
not charter. We don't have our own police department. We contract with the sheriff's department.
Right, but
most cities don't have charters.
Right, and so you were part of an organization.
I was the president of the California Contract Cities Association, a statewide organization of municipalities that come together for education, for advocacy, and so I had a leadership position in that organization about 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay, so you know some folks in the county.
And they know me, and they know my record, they know what I've achieved in West Hollywood, but they also know what type of leadership I've provided on behalf of the state.
I want to go back to property because there's no doubt that these last 5 years have been brutal when you look at property values. Although some of the more well-heeled areas in LA County didn't do as poorly as others. And no doubt this county didn't suffer similar to Riverside County or San Bernardino County. But I understand that LA County expects a rise in taxable parcels over 4% in value.
This year's assessment roll showed a 4.66% growth over last year. And this is the third year in a row we've had an increase in assessed value. And that's good for the county because that means that the property tax base is strong, and that means that the services such as police and fire and roads and public health and children's services are all being funded appropriately.
And as I understand it, that rise will bring in about $50 million more.
$50 million more this year than the previous year.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
Even for a county the size of Los Angeles, that is a lot of money.
That's correct.
So as part of the assessor's office, do you prognosticate, do you look forward to see how property values will increase or decrease to help the county do its budgeting?
We do an annual forecast where we try to provide, for budgetary purposes, the CEO and the Board of Supervisors some information. But the one thing about the assessor's office, the basic function of our job is looking backward, not looking forward. We look at what has occurred and make a determination about your property value, and then record that. But we do have to have we do have some unique information available to us that
anything you can tell us publicly. How does 2014 look?
That's too far. That's too far out.
It is. So
we really begin putting those numbers together in December.
Got it. Okay. His name is Jeff Prang. He is a member of the West Hollywood City Council, also a candidate for assessor in Los Angeles County. The primary will be held in June 2014. When we come back, we'll be speaking with the mayor of Cerritos. His name is Bruce Barrows. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
What state has the most counties in the nation? California, Georgia, New York, or Texas? Texas has the largest number of counties in the United States, 254. California has 58 counties.
It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Bruce Barrows. He is the mayor of Cerritos, also a member of the board of directors of the League of California Cities LA division as its immediate past president. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I've spoken with other city elected officials about the question of stormwater and urban runoff. It may seem esoteric, but it is a very important issue because there are certain rules and regulations that impact municipal governments in positive and negative ways, and this could be negative in terms of fiscal health. What can you tell us about that?
It comes, as I hesitate here, it
Right.
really goes back to the loss of redevelopment funds for the cities.
Oh, yes.
The cities, with the recession and everything all happening at the same time, plus the decision in Sacramento, to kill this off that hurt all the cities.
Kill this meaning?
Redevelopment.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot there going on, but the cities are financially, under a lot of duress right now.
Well, look, I think it's fair to say, and let me digress for a second, when you consider what the cities have had to face vis-a-vis Sacramento, the complete elimination of redevelopment, and then recently, Governor Brown had the charge to all but eliminate enterprise zones. They're a shell of their former selves. Those were the two tools that cities had used to revitalize blighted areas and to just generally create catalytic consequences of various economic activity. Those are gone.
It's not, we'll come back to the
Yes,
urban
please.
runoff thing, but it's not just that we've lost a tool to combat blight.
Right.
There are cities like ours that use it as an economic tool,
Right.
To take over blight. But we created a business model to where we generated long-term cash, where we loaned money to the agency. It didn't come from bond sales, but it's our
Right.
money. So the battles are going on. There's over 120 court suits against the state of California right now, with more to come.
Right, because under the law which eliminated redevelopment, there was a provision which said that if a project was already in the pipeline, that project could continue. The challenge is that the state is taking a very aggressive position on whether a project was in the pipeline.
That's exactly it. And what they said is, if the money was loaned within the first 2 years of the agency's life, that's valid. So our agency started back in 1969, but we had an ongoing relationship over 40 years where we were loaning money to the agency, and under state law you're allowed to loan the money at 8% interest. So they came back and said, well, it's back at 1%, but they're clawing back. In our case, we're losing potentially hundreds of millions of dollars from this.
Do you feel as if that at some time in the near future we will see a version of redevelopment, maybe different than what it was? Because even 2 years later, I've spoken with many municipal officials who really lament the loss of this tool, would like to see at least some form of it come back, be it focused on affordable housing or whatever. They want this tool back.
The thing is, I don't mind working on affordable housing. Our city is one of the few that met all the housing requirements set down by the state of California. The problem is redevelopment is a tool to generate economic development, create jobs and things like that. If all you do is create things that use up money, there's no way to pay it back. So you have to create a new source of revenue. And the cities that did very well with redevelopment, like our city, generated the business side as well as the
residential side.
The residential side, if you want to call it residential.
But one could even argue if you build affordable housing, it still will have catalytic consequences, because if there's new housing, you need a new dry cleaner, you need a new laundromat, you need a new liquor store, you need a new grocery store. I mean,
well, most people overlook one thing. The city of Long Beach, for instance, gets 22 cents every dollar paid into property taxes.
Right.
There's over 200 cities that use a different business model. Ours is one of them. It has no low property tax cities. Ours is 7 cents. So if, for these cities to add more housing, we create a negative cash flow with more housing.
Because?
The cost of providing services to the homes is greater than the revenue coming in.
I see. So for Cerritos, as an example, redevelopment would need to be more expansive beyond just affordable housing for it to be an effective tool.
Or we need to go ahead and because right now the difference between ours, the 7 cents, and the 22 cents Long Beach gets, or 26 that LA gets, or higher numbers in Northern California for Oakland and so on, that money goes to the county.
So why is it that Cerritos has this low draw.
Well, we had no property taxes when we started. So when Prop 13 passed, then what subsequent legislation went through made a flat base for everybody at 7%, and that's where ours is.
And cities like LA and Oakland have increased it.
No, they were higher to begin with. They came down.
Oh, I understand. So
Yeah,
it was,
Prop
it was a
13.
pre-Prop 13 question. Okay.
And our business model relied on the the use of redevelopment and stuff
Right.
like that. Ours, it worked for us, and I should say for a lot of cities.
Did you have an enterprise zone in your city?
No.
So that issue hasn't. But presumably, though, the revamped enterprise zone formula could be of benefit to a city like Cerritos, because now it looks at not a geographic area, but the types of jobs you're bringing in: manufacturing, R&D.
Our manufacturing's full. We have a 2% vacancy rate.
Wow.
And our retail is there's very few vacancies outside the old Nordstrom's building.
Sure.
At the mall. But redevelopment, the main thing is that you can generate and choose all across the country to develop new business. Jobs come in, whether it's manufacturing or retail, whatever it is.
So do you think there is hope to see some version of redevelopment passed in Sacramento?
I really don't.
Really?
Based on what I've seen so far, it's all so watered down. It's not going to help much. It may be that we may have to use an initiative process.
Right.
To make
Governor
that
Brown
happen.
has said that he would support lowering the threshold to pass tax increases to 55% for matters that would allow the city to create its own redevelopment, for example.
Yeah, but you can't do it just from taxes. And
Bonds.
it's the same thing. You got to pay for it somehow.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
The money's got to come from somewhere, and redevelopment was a perfect tool that worked. And in our case, we did give over $30 million back to the school district in terms of joint use facilities.
Right.
So in our case, our school district, who has supported redevelopment, has been very beneficial to them.
You mentioned watering down, so I do want to get back to groundwater, or I should say stormwater and urban runoff. This is another example of cities being impacted by regulations passed by other governmental entities.
That's correct.
And so explain the scenario that you face in about 2 minutes.
Okay, basically what's going on is, the legislation started from the federal government and
Clean
the
Water
state.
Act.
And from that, there's a series of things that we have to do to clean up the water. And if the water comes in from one county into another county, as it does on one side of our city, if their requirements are different than ours, we've got to clean up their water.
Yikes.
The other side, for the LA basin, the water comes out of the mountains. It doesn't meet this, the Clean Water Act either. So it's got to be cleaned up along that process somewhere. Right now, the requirement is to have the cities it flows through clean it up. And there is no pure science on it. That's what all the court suits been going on that we've had within our LA basin, is to get down to good science. And from that, to come up with good technology
And I
to
thought
clean
the
it.
county was taking control of that, but now it's reverting back to the cities. Is that right?
The county, the agreement was in place, and it's kind of fallen apart. We're kind of waiting to see if we can get it back together again.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that there is a water bond that the governor's proposing. It's a once in every 10-year opportunity. And what the cities are looking at, and that's what the LA Division League of Cities is looking at, is have a resolution passed to ask the legislators and the governor to allow language be inserted into that to provide funding to meet these requirements.
Interesting. Well, we know the water bond may be reopened. It was supposed to be on the ballot in 2010 and then 2012.
We keep hearing it's coming.
It's coming in 2014. Will it be 11.1 billion or more or less? I mean, there's a lot of talk about paring down the water bond, but we'll see. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, this one would allow the cities to help. We're looking at a $280 billion fix for LA County, and that's going to be on the backs of all the residents.
We'll have to see what happens.
and
That's more than
businesses.
11.1 billion. His name is Bruce Barrows. He is the mayor of Cerritos. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.